He was born into a world of chandeliers, velvet curtains, private jets, and the sound of glasses clinking in golden halls, but none of it meant anything to him, because from the first day he came into this earth, the doctor whispered a truth that crushed his millionaire father's pride and broke his mother's spirit. Your son is blind, sir, and there is nothing that medicine can do. His father, Richard Holloway, a man who made his fortune through oil and real estate, refused to accept the diagnosis. He flew in specialists from New York, London, Geneva, and Dubai, each one poking and prodding at the boy's delicate eyes, shining lights, whispering jargon, recommending surgeries, but after years of tests and failed procedures, the truth remained solid: his son, Michael, would never see. Richard hardened his heart, masking his shame behind power, money, and arrogance, while his wife, Eleanor, sank into depression, spending more and more time in her bedroom until one cold December night she died quietly, leaving the boy with nothing but the faint memory of her perfume and the softness of her lullabies. Growing up blind in the Holloway mansion was a strange paradox. The boy had every material possession a child could dream of: marble staircases, fountains in the garden, a room filled with toys from across the world, but not a single real friend, not one person who treated him like he wasn't broken. The maids whispered about him behind closed doors, calling him the cursed heir, while the tutors hired by his father taught him math and music out of duty, never warmth. His father loved him, yes, but it was a love covered in control, a love that wanted to cage him, keep him hidden from the world so the Holloway empire would not be embarrassed by weakness. By the time Michael turned 17, he had developed a sharp tongue, a quick wit, and a secret longing to experience the world beyond the gates, though he couldn't see it. He often pressed his palms against the cold iron of the estate fence, listening to the sounds of children laughing in the distance, imagining what their faces might look like. It was during this restless, lonely period of his life that Grace entered the story. Grace, the black maid who came from nothing, who answered a desperate job posting because her 2 young children were hungry and her landlord was threatening eviction. She arrived at the mansion in the rain, her shoes worn thin, her back already sore from years of scrubbing floors for people who never once bothered to learn her name. Richard Holloway saw her as just another disposable worker, someone to polish the gold banisters and mop the endless marble corridors, but to Michael, she was different from the very first moment. He heard her humming as she cleaned, a low, soulful tune that reminded him of the lullabies his mother once sang. One afternoon, curious, he asked her to stay a moment and talk. Grace was startled. No one in the Holloway mansion had ever asked her for conversation, let alone the master's blind son, but she sat down hesitantly on the edge of his bed, and when she spoke, her voice was rich, warm, and filled with life. She told him stories of her childhood, of running barefoot on dusty roads, of her grandmother who believed in healing through touch and prayer, of nights when the stars were the only lanterns in the sky. Michael listened with an intensity that shocked her. Though he could not see her face, he felt her words paint colors in his mind. Over the weeks, a friendship bloomed. Grace treated him not like a fragile porcelain heir, but like a boy capable of laughing, teasing, and dreaming. She would guide his hands across objects in the mansion, describing their shapes and colors vividly, helping him build a secret world of images in his mind. But one stormy evening, when thunder rattled the windows and loneliness pressed heavy on his chest, Michael broke down in front of her, confessing the pain that haunted him every day, the pain of knowing he would never see the sky, never see his own reflection, never know what his mother looked like beyond the fragments of memory. He wept, and Grace, moved by an instinct older than reason, reached out and rubbed his eyes gently with her rough, calloused fingers, whispering a phrase her grandmother always said when she healed scraped knees and fevers: "Light finds those who believe." The moment her skin touched his eyelids, something strange happened. Michael froze, his breath caught, because for the first time in his life, a faint glimmer pierced the black void of his vision. It was weak, like the flash of a dying candle, but it was there, a shimmer of light, impossible yet undeniable. He gasped, trembling, describing the sensation to Grace, who pulled back in shock. "You saw something?" she asked, her own heart racing. Michael nodded furiously, saying it was like a spark had entered his darkness. The next day, when Grace touched his eyes again, the spark grew stronger. He began to see vague outlines, shapes bathed in fog, as if a curtain were slowly lifting. By the 3rd week, he could describe the color of the curtains in his room, the glint of light on the polished floor, even the outline of Grace's face, which he said was surrounded by a warm glow. It was a miracle, but miracles often breed suspicion, and when Richard Holloway heard his son babbling about seeing, he dismissed it as delusion. "Don't fill his head with fantasies," Richard barked at Grace, warning her to focus on cleaning, not meddling. But Michael knew it was real, and Grace believed too, though she didn't understand how or why. And so they continued their secret ritual, each touch bringing him closer to full sight, until one morning he woke up and saw the sunrise from his bedroom window, his first true sunrise, a painting of fire and gold across the sky, so beautiful it made him collapse to his knees in gratitude. Yet sight brought not only wonder but revelation. As Michael explored the mansion with new eyes, he began noticing things he had never known. The guards patrolling the gates with cold, sharp eyes, the locked doors to rooms he was never allowed to enter, the way his father barked orders at the staff, treating them like slaves instead of humans. Worst of all, he saw how the others looked at Grace, disdain, contempt, as if her very presence was an insult to the golden walls. Rage stirred in him, rage he had never felt before, and with it came dangerous curiosity. Why had his father kept him so sheltered? Why was the mansion surrounded not just by beauty but by invisible chains? And most unsettling of all, why did Grace's touch awaken his sight when no doctor in the world could? He began digging for answers, sneaking into the forbidden parts of the mansion with Grace's help. One night, they stumbled upon a locked study filled with medical files, reports of failed surgeries, and correspondence between his father and doctors around the world. But tucked between the papers was something far stranger. A letter from a woman Michael had never heard of, warning Richard that the boy's blindness was not natural but the result of a curse placed long ago, and that only the hands of the humble could restore what was stolen. Michael trembled as Grace read the letter aloud, his mind spinning with the possibility that his entire life had been shaped not just by misfortune but by dark secrets his father refused to acknowledge. And in that moment, standing in the dusty glow of the forbidden study, Michael realized two things: his sight was returning, and with it came a destiny he could not yet understand, and his father, the man he had trusted even in his coldness, might be hiding truths darker than blindness itself. Michael's world, once pure darkness, was now filled with light, but the light revealed truths far more terrifying than the darkness ever had, for with his new eyes he saw his father's empire for what it truly was, not a kingdom of success and honor, but a fortress of secrets, lies, and greed, guarded by men who carried guns beneath their suits and watched him as if he were a prisoner, not a son. Grace warned him to be careful, but Michael's hunger for truth burned too brightly, so he confronted Richard one night in the grand dining hall, accusing him of hiding the cursed letter, demanding to know who had condemned him to blindness. His father's mask of control shattered, and for the first time Michael saw fear flicker in his eyes. Richard confessed that long ago, in his ruthless climb to wealth, he had betrayed a partner who cursed his bloodline in vengeance, swearing that his firstborn would never see the world. Desperate to protect the family name, Richard spent millions on doctors and walls to keep the boy isolated, terrified that if the curse was broken, the secrets of his empire would unravel. But now that Michael could see, Richard's fear turned into fury, and he ordered Grace to be fired, warning that if she ever stepped foot in the mansion again, she would vanish without a trace. Michael refused to let her go, and in that defiance, a war ignited between father and son, money and power on one side, faith and love on the other. That very night, with Grace's help, Michael escaped the mansion, stumbling through the city streets for the first time, overwhelmed by the lights, the people, the stars above that felt like heaven itself. But freedom came with a price. Richard's men hunted them like shadows, determined to drag Michael back before he could expose the truth. And as the chapter closed, the impossible miracle of sight became a dangerous weapon, for Michael was no longer just a blind heir, he was a witness to his father's sins, and witnesses, in Richard's world, were not allowed to live. The city was alive with light and chaos, but for Michael and Grace it was a battlefield, every alley echoing with the footsteps of men sent to drag them back into the gilded prison of the Holloway mansion, and when they finally confronted Richard on the rooftop of his own skyscraper, rain pouring like judgment from the heavens, father and son faced each other not as family but as enemies, Michael demanding the truth, Richard clutching a gun, insisting that love meant control and survival meant obedience. In that moment, Grace stepped between them, her voice steady, declaring that no empire built on curses and fear could last, and as Richard raised the weapon, Michael's eyes, once cursed into darkness, saw everything with piercing clarity, the trembling of his father's hands, the weight of his lies, the emptiness in his power. Choosing love over fear, Michael shielded Grace with his own body, ready to die free rather than live blind under chains, but instead of bullets, he heard his father's sob break through the storm. Richard dropped the gun, collapsing under the guilt he had carried for decades. The curse, bound by blood and betrayal, shattered in that instant of repentance, and the rain cleared to reveal a dawn more radiant than any Michael had ever imagined. He turned to Grace, seeing her clearly for the first time, the strength in her tired eyes, the beauty of her soul shining brighter than the sunrise, And he knew that no wealth could compare to the gift she had given him, not just sight, but freedom, hope, and love. Together they walked away from the empire of shadows, leaving Richard to face the ruins of his greed, while Michael stepped into a new life where light was not just something he could see, but something he could finally live. The glitter of victory hadn't yet faded when trouble returned to Amara's door. 2 days after the championship, she came home from the hospital with flowers for her mother, only to find a man in a black suit waiting outside her apartment. He wasn't smiling. "Miss Daniels." "Yes, you've been served." He handed her a folded envelope, nodded politely, and disappeared down the hall. Inside the envelope was a letter stamped with gold, Hawthorne Estate Legal Affairs. Her chest tightened as she read. "Greater than you are hereby notified that you have violated contractual confidentiality by exploiting the reputation of the Hawthorne family for personal gain." Beatrice was suing her. Amara's hands shook. "Personal gain," she whispered. She hadn't used their name, hadn't spoken to the press, hadn't done anything but dance. That night, she sat by her mother's bedside, trying to hide her tears. Her mother, wise even through the pain, took her hand. "Baby, when they throw stones, don't throw back. Build something. Meanwhile, in the mansion of mirrors and money, Liam stormed into the drawing room. "You sued her." Beatrice didn't look up from her tea. "Actions have consequences, darling. She didn't do anything wrong. She humiliated our name. The Hawthorne family became a punchline on the internet. My son, dancing with a maid, what do you think people say about that?" "I don't care what they say." She stood abruptly, eyes blazing. "You might not, but I built this empire on reputation. And I won't let a girl with calloused hands and tragic eyes destroy it." Liam's voice was cold. "You're destroying me instead." Days turned into weeks. Court hearings loomed, and the story spread like wildfire. Millionaire family sues former maid over viral waltz. Sympathy poured in from around the country. Talk shows debated it. Supporters began a crowdfunding page to help Amara fight the lawsuit. The same people who had once laughed at her now called her a symbol of dignity. Liam watched from the sidelines, trapped between blood and conscience. One night, he drove to her small apartment. When she opened the door, exhaustion clouded her smile. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I had to see you," he said. "I'm sorry about my mother. I'm trying to stop this." Her eyes softened. "You can't fight her, Liam. She doesn't lose." He stepped closer. "Maybe she's never fought someone like you." For a long moment, silence hummed between them, until the soft sound of her mother's cough broke it. Amara turned quickly. "She's resting," she said. "She's been worse lately." "I can help," Liam said. "Doctors, bills." "No." Her tone was firm. "I don't want your money. I just want my freedom." He hesitated, then nodded. "Then I'll give you something better." He took her hand. "A partner." 3 nights later, an anonymous video appeared online, footage of the original ballroom challenge. Only this time, it wasn't edited for mockery. It showed Beatrice's cruelty, the crowd's laughter, the ultimatum: "If you dance this waltz, you marry my son." The internet erupted. The hashtag dance of respect trended worldwide. People demanded justice for Amara. Sponsors began pulling their support from Beatrice's charities. Investors called. Reputation cracked like thin glass. In her mansion, Beatrice watched the chaos unfold, face pale with fury. "Who leaked this?" Liam said nothing. She turned slowly toward him. "You. I told you to leave her alone. You've destroyed everything we built." "No," he said quietly. "You did that when you forgot what grace looked like." Days later, Beatrice appeared on television for damage control. But public sympathy had shifted. Reporters bombarded her with questions. "Is it true you threatened to fire Miss Daniels? Did you use the phrase, 'If you dance this waltz, you marry my son'?" Beatrice froze. Cameras flashed. She smiled stiffly, but the damage was irreparable. Amara, meanwhile, received a call she never expected. The director of the National Dance Revival Tour wanted her as their lead performer for the new season. "Your story inspired millions," he said. "We want that fire on stage." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Thank you. But I have someone to care for first." He paused. "We can arrange medical coverage for your mother. Full support. Just say yes." For the first time in years, hope filled her lungs. "Then yes," she whispered. When Liam heard the news, he drove straight to the community center where she practiced. She was on the stage, barefoot, spinning gracefully under the dim lights. He clapped softly, and she turned, surprised. I just wanted to see you dance one more time, he said. You could come to the show, she replied. He smiled sadly. I can't. I'm leaving. I sold my shares, cut ties with the company. I'm starting over. Her heart twisted. Because of me. Because of what you made me see. She stepped forward. Liam. But before she could finish, her phone rang. The hospital. Her mother's name flashed across the screen, and Amara's world stilled. The nurse's voice trembled through the line. Miss Daniels, I'm so sorry. The funeral was small, quiet, wrapped in spring rain. Liam stood in the back, hat low, as Amara said goodbye to the woman who had taught her to move through pain like water through stone. When it ended, he walked up slowly. She'd be proud, he whispered. She told me to keep dancing, Amara said softly. Even when the music stops. He nodded. Then let's make sure it never does. A year passed. Seasons changed, and with them, the world's attention. But Amara Daniels' name never faded. Her dance on the National Revival Tour became legend, each performance closing with the same haunting waltz that had once cost her everything. Audiences cried, cheered, and rose to their feet. Critics called her the voice of resilience written in motion. She had gone from maid to symbol, from outcast to icon. Yet beneath the applause, she carried one ache that applause could never soothe, the memory of the man who had once taken her hand under moonlight and whispered, just once. Liam Hawthorne had vanished from society's pages. Rumors whispered of him working abroad, teaching art programs for underprivileged youth, investing quietly in small communities rather than empires. Some said he'd given away his fortune. To Amara, he had become a ghost woven into every melody. Then, one evening in London, while the revival tour prepared for its closing show, a message arrived backstage. It was handwritten, formal, sealed in wax. Greater than Miss Daniels, if you dance this waltz one last time, you marry my son. Beatrice Hawthorne. Amara froze, staring at the signature. For a moment she thought it was a cruel joke. But attached beneath the note was a glossy invitation, the Hawthorne Foundation Charity Ball, Rebirth Gala. The date was tomorrow. The location, the same mansion where it all began. She laughed once, softly. Rebirth, she murmured. How poetic. The next night, the chandeliers of the Hawthorne mansion glittered once more, but something in the air had changed. The guests, older now, carried a different kind of whisper, humble, uncertain. Beatrice herself stood by the entrance, silver-haired, eyes no longer cold but weary. When Amara stepped through the doors in a long flowing gown of midnight blue, every head turned. Beatrice's breath caught. You came. Amara nodded slowly. You asked me to dance. Beatrice's voice trembled. I did, but not to mock you this time. To ask forgiveness. Silence spread like ripples. After my husband passed, she said quietly, I realized how small our pride looks beside loss. I built my world on appearances, but you built yours on grace. And you were right. My son was right. Her eyes filled with tears. He's here tonight. He's upstairs. He doesn't know you're coming. Amara climbed the grand staircase, the same marble steps she had once scrubbed on her knees. Each one echoed with ghosts, laughter, humiliation, music. At the top, she found the east ballroom doors slightly open. Inside, the lights were low, and a man stood at the window, looking out at the rain. Liam, she whispered. He turned, and time folded. He was thinner, older, his face marked by travel and hard lessons, but his eyes still carried that same quiet fire. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then he smiled. You got my mother to write to you. She laughed softly. Actually, she got me to come. He nodded slowly. She's changed. So have you, she said. So have you, he replied. The orchestra downstairs began to tune, soft strings floating up through the hall. He extended a hand. One last dance. She hesitated, memories flashing, the first night, the humiliation, the applause, the loss. Then she placed her hand in his. Only if it's the waltz. They stepped into the center of the empty ballroom, where the same melody began to play. It was the same song, slow, delicate, full of ghosts. But this time, they weren't fighting the rhythm. They were becoming it. Every turn felt lighter, freer. The walls seemed to breathe with them. Downstairs, Beatrice stood at the foot of the staircase, listening. The guests, hearing the faint strains, gathered quietly. Someone whispered, that's her. The waltzing maid. The doors opened, and there, beneath the crystal chandeliers, they saw it, the son of a millionaire and the maid who had defied him, moving as one body, one story, one redemption. When the final note ended, the silence was sacred. Then, softly, Beatrice began to clap. The sound spread, multiplying until the entire hall thundered with applause, not mockery, not shock, but awe. Liam took Amara's hands and sank to one knee. Gasps filled the air. "Amara Daniels," he said, his voice steady, "you once told me I'd make you believe in your worth. But you're the one who made me believe in life again. Will you marry me? Not because of a waltz, not because of a challenge, but because I can't imagine a world where we stop dancing together." Tears glimmered down her cheeks. "You're sure?" He smiled. "I've been sure since the night you made the whole world watch a maid teach a millionaire how to move." She nodded once. "Then yes. Yes, I'll dance with you forever." Dash dash dash. Applause turned to cheers. Cameras flashed. The same media that once mocked her now called it the most beautiful redemption in modern high society. But to Amara, the world's noise faded beneath the music of her heartbeat. Weeks later, the ceremony was small and quiet, held under a canopy of magnolia trees. Beatrice stood beside them, her hand on her chest, whispering through tears, "If you dance this waltz, you marry my son." And this time, it wasn't a curse. It was a blessing. As the orchestra began to play, Amara and Liam stepped into the light, gliding together beneath the blooming petals. Every step was a promise, every spin, a memory of struggle turned into grace. When the music ended, the applause rose like dawn, and for once, Amara didn't feel like she'd climbed out of the shadows. She was the light. Dash dash dash. Years later, children's laughter echoed through that same ballroom. A little girl twirled in the center, her curls bouncing as she giggled. "Mama, watch." Amara smiled from the piano. "What's that?" called. "It's the waltz." The child shouted. "Grandma said it's our family dance." Amara glanced toward the window, where Beatrice, older, gentler, sat knitting quietly. Their eyes met, and they shared a quiet, knowing smile. Outside, the sun poured through the glass like liquid gold, and the music rose once more. The maid who was mocked had become legend. The waltz that once broke her became the rhythm of her forever. The end.